ICE is in all of the headlines right now. That's all anybody is talking about now, whether it's Border Patrol or ICE. Everybody is ICE right now, Mr.
Right.
Lyons. So when it comes to the enforcement operations right now, you've always been going after special interest migrants, from what I understand. You've always been going after terrorists. That's always been a priority. But that has shifted. We're seeing Iranian nationals really targeted here. Is that accurate? Is that what we're seeing ICE doing? Is that the priority for these national security concerns, or what are we seeing right now?
No, I think what you're seeing is ICE doing their mission as a whole, right? The whole entire portfolio is open for immigration and customs enforcement. And, to your point, we've always done targeted enforcement and we've always focused on high risk countries, not just Iran, but, People's Republic of China, Syria, um, various countries on the African continent. There's some Eastern European countries that are high on the radar. So what you're seeing is we're focusing on our current counter-terror mission that we've always had. Now, it just happens to be that obviously Iran's in the news right now. And we do have a large population of known and suspected terrorists that were led into this country under the last administration that ICE is focused on. You heard Secretary Noem talking to the governors recently about the heightened threat level. And she's 100% right. She wants us to go out there and encounter these known gotaways and these, known suspected terrorists before something bad happens. The only way ICE is going to do that is if we treat every immigration violator the same and we take action on them. So while we are focused on those, national security risks, we are just opening up the aperture and continue to do what ICE has done, since the 9/11 Commission helped form ICE back in 2003, 2004, and that's focused on national security.
Now, do we know, you're saying you have a large population of known or suspected terrorists. Do we know how many of those individuals might be Iranian nationals?
No, we're still compiling all that information and we're still conducting investigations on that. So I don't want to give a firm number on that. There is a large amount though. Like I said, it's just not Iran. There's a bunch of high risk nations that have let individuals come to our country. And under the previous administration, and you're reporting, you've seen it yourself down there, from the Del Rio Bridge incident on, just these mass decompression efforts that allow so many people in our country, which and no fault of anyone in DHS, but we didn't have the proper vetting back then. So now we're really focused on identifying these individuals that were let in, going back and looking at our vetting and seeing what we can do to make sure that we round up and arrest every national security threat that could pose potential harm to the United States.
Talking about those individuals that were able to come into the country over the last 4 years because Border Patrol agents were busy processing and transporting, right? There were a lot of holes in the southern border. I witnessed that time and time again. So, is there concern for sleeper cells for people to be in the United States organizing right under our noses in our backyard? Is this a concern? And what are we doing about it if so?
There is. I think there is a heightened concern. You've heard the president speak to it. You've heard Secretary Noem speak to it. They raise the threat level because they take it serious because the fact that we just don't know who's here. And that's the unfortunate part. But like you said, the great men and women of the Border Patrol, they were tasked with doing that processing. They weren't allowed to do their job properly. Now, under this administration, you have the border that's almost 97% secure. They're holding down that line that now ICE and the other Department of Justice entities can now focus on the interior. We can go out there, we try to locate all these known or suspected terrorists, all these, known gotaways, right? That we can actually focus our efforts on the interior using immigration enforcement as a tool with our partners in the Department of Justice to identify these public safety threats and really kind of drill down on any threat to the homeland now that the border's secure.
So obviously you guys are on it, mission focused, but should Americans be worried? Obviously, this isn't something you can fix overnight. These people are hiding. If that is true, if we have sleeper cells, materializing here that are materialized, what should Americans think? Should they be worried about all of this?
I think Americans should be confident that, under this administration, under the leadership of Secretary Noem, you have federal law enforcement agencies that are out there every day protecting the homeland. I think the American public needs to be aware. They just need to be cautious, but they need to go living their lives because they wake up in the greatest country every day. And what I'll say is because we're allowed to do our law enforcement mission again as immigration customs enforcement, as we're truly meant to be, I think we're encountering more and more of these public safety threats and these national security threats. So the American public should feel at ease. The fact that we're out there every day doing what the president promised. What he promised the American people was to make America safe again, and that's what we're doing. But I still think, like anything, if the American population sees something, say something, right? You should, go about your life. We live in one of the safest countries in the world. We should be happy we're in the United States, but just have a sense of conscience that there are these potential security threats out there. We need to be aware of that.
Now, obviously, you're talking about you guys are able to go out and do your jobs. You're out there every single day. We have seen you out there every single day. A lot of these days kind of produce violence or rioting or issues where there's attacks, assaults on agents and officers. 500% increase that we're seeing since really the protests began. What is the morale like for the agents right now? Obviously, there's a lot of misinformation, things being spread out there. There was a guy being beaten to the ground, but then the video of him, wielding a weed whacker towards these agents and officers was not shown. How are they? I guess two questions here. How are we countering the messaging, and what's the morale like for these guys and girls that are on the ground right now fighting this fight on the front lines?
Well, I'd say, to answer both parts of your question, that's my job, is to make sure that I'm getting out there every day and highlighting the great work they do. Through your reporting, through other media outlets, to actually tell the truth of what ICE is actually doing. And I think that's important. If we get out there and we show the American public exactly who we're going after, exactly the criminal threats that are in their neighborhoods and their communities, and that ICE is a viable law enforcement tool, that we're out there every day going after these public safety threats. I think that's key. I think that's key to letting the American public know. And if some media outlets don't pick it up, so be it. But we have to go ahead and counter that false narrative with the good of what we're doing. To the morale, I'd say it's never been higher. Sure, we have a lot more work than we ever had, but the men and women of ICE are sworn law enforcement officers that signed up to do a job. And, under this administration, they're allowed to do their job again. And, they've never had the backing of a president and a secretary like they do now. Someone that's out there that knows exactly what they're doing. They'll give them any resource that has their back. And, morale is high with that, knowing that they can go out there and they can do their job with the full support of the American people and the full support of the administration.
What about the whole legislation in California where they're trying to make it so they can't wear a mask? I mean, you've talked about this, Director, because a lot of people say they're doing it like in a nefarious intent. I've been out there when they're being doxxed. I've been called names. I've been spit at. And unfortunately, as media, we don't cover our face or our identity, right? We're out
Right.
there observing. What do you say to that legislation, to the people who are saying that they're acting like vigilantes with their faces covered?
And I've always been transparent in the fact that I would love to sit down with elected officials and come up with a way to protect ICE agents. I've said it many times. Like, if you look at post January 20th up until February-ish, and even before January 20th, ICE officers and agents never had their faces covered. It wasn't until all these doxing incidents. And then you also hear, the naysayers say, there's no evidence. Show us the proof they're being doxed. Well, I'm not going to show you a website and drive more attention to it. We've highlighted it. We've shown what happens when these officers and agents, families, information get out there. It's hot. You're out reporting in California. They don't want to wear those masks, but it's for their own safety. If I could figure out a way that we could do it and they can do their job safely, I would love to sit down with lawmakers and come up with some solution to that. But until I can ensure the men and women of ICE and their families are going to be protected, I'm going to let them do whatever they need to do to protect themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. The doxing thing is hard. I mean, David Kim was literally, it was posted and somebody was tagging me in it, and it's 5 different phone numbers. Luckily, none of them were his, but he's one of the lead agents on the ground in LA, and he doesn't cover his face, right? And he has his name blasted. And those are the risks that they're taking, I suppose, in
Right.
doing the job that they signed up for. With that being said, more and more people are going to be out on the streets. 4th of July is coming up, obviously a big one for DHS to have an eye on. Obviously, ICE is out running around doing these operations. But with the sleeper cells, going back to that, and with the Iranian nationals, and with the heightened concern, and the people that came into the country over the last 4 years, is there heightened concern surrounding the holiday? All these people out celebrating the nation's independence, a nation a lot of these individuals likely don't love, right? And so you've got this celebration wrapped up into these massive gatherings. Are there concerns about that? That these might be flashpoints, that this might be a powder keg on the 4th of July?
It is, and I can tell you from experience, DHS takes months ahead of time for big celebrations like this, Personal experience, I was the federal coordinator up in Massachusetts when I ran the Boston office for the Boston Pops. And we planned for that months out to ensure that nothing like 9/11 or any type of Boston Marathon bombing would ever happen again. So DHS has been planning for these events for months. The American public should feel safe going to any one of these large fireworks celebrations, for instance, because DHS has worked with local and state partners um, for days, week, months leading up to this to ensure that we have all the most current threat intelligence. We have enough officers and agents embedded with local law enforcement, state law enforcement to ensure that no violence like this will happen at anyone's, Fourth of July celebration.
So you wouldn't recommend anybody keeps it tighter, stays in their own homes, keeps their circles closer. You're saying, hey, go celebrate America, go out there and enjoy the festivities because we've got your back and we've been planning for months.
I would say that, I would really hope the American public, especially under this administration and under Secretary Noem's guidance, we're taking this serious. We're now allowed to do our law enforcement and our intelligent mission. And this is what the American people want. They want to be able to go out there and celebrate and not be afraid. And because the men and women at DHS, all entities within the department are out there truly focused on America's public safety, I think, again, people should go out and enjoy themselves, be proud to be American, be out there and celebrate. But again, just keep your head on a swivel and eyes open. And if you see something, say something, just report it. But good to know that the men and women of Department of Homeland Security are out there to ensure that people can celebrate in the United States.
When it comes to the Iranian nationals that you guys have arrested, obviously we've talked, you guys are not just prioritizing Iranian nationals, but because of it being in the news, that is something that the agency is posting about, is regularly making sure that America knows that they're going after these guys, just like when TDA was in the
Right.
headlines, right? So now we're seeing Iranian nationals. 130 in the last 7 days, last week, nearly 700 in custody. Is that number higher, lower? Is that about right? Like, where are we? Because if I don't have a baseline to compare it to, that number doesn't mean much. Is that a
You
high
know,
number?
I would say it is higher. It is higher. We focus now some of our like I said, with our partners with the FBI and the intelligence community, really focusing on potential threats, potential bad actors who could be up to nefarious things. But I think you will see just because of ICE's enforcement efforts, like you said earlier, the fact that we are doing targeted enforcement, we are doing the mission that we always have. You're going to see a lot more focus, like not only on like TDA, but known suspected terrorists, because that's one of our big portfolios is our counterterrorism operations, and we're really proud of that. And where we want to show the American public exactly what we're doing. While you may see an uptick in Iranian arrests, you're going to see an uptick in Syrian arrests, Somalis, anyone that does pose that national security threat, you're going to see ICE out there. And we will publicize it because we want the American public to know that they voted for this under this administration and that this is what the men and women of ICE are doing to ensure that they're safe. But again, like I said earlier, now that we've opened up the whole entire portfolio of immigration enforcement, if we go out there, especially in sanctuary jurisdictions where people and local agencies won't turn an individual over to us in a secure setting, ICE is going to go out on these targeted enforcement operations and make those arrests. Now, if we encounter someone that's here illegally, we're not going to turn a blind eye to like in the past. So you're going to see that 30% that may be what we call other immigration violators or just solely be in the country illegally. But that's the mission of ICE. ICE is a specific law enforcement agency that has a specific mission, much like DEA with drugs, ATF with firearms. ICE has illegal immigration. And if we go out there when we're going after the worst of the worst and we encounter you, if you're hanging out with a bad guy that's here illegally and you're here illegally yourself, we're not going to turn a blind eye to that. And that's where you are going to see that percentage. But I'm very proud of the fact that what we are doing, more than 70% have serious criminal convictions or are pending serious crimes that were released from a local jurisdiction. And I think that's what the American people voted for. That's what President Trump promised. That's Secretary Noem's vision for us to go out there and get these criminals. And that's what we're doing.
Now, when it comes to those criminal convictions, I just have to ask, these aren't just people that cross the border? Because we've heard Tom Homan say, if you cross the border illegally, you're a criminal. Is that who these people are too? And they're criminals, or is
No.
this DUIs, assaults, robberies, drug convictions, gun possessions, things like that?
You'll hear someone say, oh, this poor individual, he was arrested for shoplifting. He did nothing else. Well, they don't take into account. Yeah, he may have shoplifted in Arizona, but he left Texas because he was already convicted of DUI several times or a homicide, and they don't take that whole scope of that criminal history into the picture, right? And that we're no longer going to do that. ICE is going to look at the whole individual, the whole criminal history, the whole threat matrix, and we're going to make that decision to arrest somebody. Like I said, we're not going to turn a blind eye to anything. If you commit a crime here in the United States, then we are going to arrest you. We are going to remove you. And so that 70% isn't just people that cross the border. These are people that a local or a state jurisdiction had deemed them a public safety threat, either convicted them or arrested them and held them in custody and didn't turn them over to ICE. So that's the people that we're going after.
Yeah, it's definitely they're in fear of their families being hurt. When it comes to the 3,000 number, Stephen Miller, the White House, saying, "Hey, we want 3,000 arrests." Do you think that that's putting pressure on the agents and officers? And do you think that that pressure, if so, is kind of making the mission look sloppy a little bit?
I would say that if you look at any organization, right, whether it's law enforcement or business, you have to have goals, right? I hate the word quota. We have heard that number. It's been reported. What I'll say is that it just emphasizes that the administration wants to see ICE doing their full mission to the max. I can tell you that the men and women of ICE are mission focused, they're mission driven, much like the Border Patrol, much like CBP. The fact that they want to get as many of these public safety threats out as they can. That number is out there, but I will tell you that the men and women of ICE, to your point earlier, this is what we've always done. We've always been out there. We've always have been mission focused, goal orientated to the fact that, strictly targeted enforcement. And I think you'll see that uptick. And now that we have that whole of government approach, we have the DEA, ATF, FBI helping us, you're going to see that number go up just because the amount of effort that's now focused on it. So I really wouldn't put too much on that number. It's just, I would say that you're just going to see the arrests increase because of this administration's commitment to putting as many resources as they can to remove these public safety threats.
How long do we think this is going to take, Director? I mean, there are talks about Biden allowing in 11 million people illegally into the country. Is this something that can be accomplished under this Trump administration? I mean, we're looking at, over 100,000 removed at this point, 190 days in. How long is this going to take? And is it feasible to say that you're going to accomplish this under Trump?
I think there's definitely a lot that we have to undo, right? There's a lot of damage that was done in the last 4 years. What I can say is, though, now that we're allowed to do our job and we have so many more resources, especially the fact that the administration is willing to invest now in the infrastructure of ICE, I think you're going to see it as an increased, steady climb, if you will, with the increase in numbers. It definitely won't happen overnight, but we know that through the president's backing and through the secretary's leadership, we're going to be able to put max effort towards it, and you're going to see us achieve what the president wants and reach that goal.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.